Today on the CTV News at 5, budget breakdown.
The magnitude of the cut will mean we have to make some very, very significant decisions going forward.
How the provincial budget will impact Southern Albertans. Plus, renewed calls for consolidation of ambulance services. And curling is getting so hot, it's cool.
CTV News with Jackie Scantlebury.
Good afternoon. We now have a clearer picture of the impact of the new provincial budget. Many Albertans are relieved to hear no new taxes and no tax hikes, but the government will be borrowing billions to run its programs. Here's a look again at the numbers. The government has a $38.6 billion in cash for the 2013 budget, including $4 billion that it's borrowing. Now, total spending is set at $40.6 billion, leaving Albertans with a $2 billion deficit. Alberta's educators are now doing the math, trying to figure out how to make do after what they call significant changes to their funding model. Daryl Rummold reports.
There's more money for schools, less money for teachers. An election promise of 50 new schools kept, 70 buildings to be renovated, $500 million set aside in this year's budget. It's part of more than $2 billion expected over the next 6 years.
They're the best teachers and we have the best education system, and I support that. So, but right now in tough times, it would be inappropriate to provide increased finances when a lot of other Albertans aren't even seeing it.
Weddick says the provincial government will continue to work with and support post-secondary and primary education in Alberta. His biggest concern as the former Minister of Advanced Education is how those numbers will affect Lethbridge's colleges and university. He says he expects the cuts to be around 3% to operational costs. But he also believes his election promise of $55 million for an expansion at the Lethbridge College to be kept inside some $650 million allocated for post-secondary infrastructure. But others contend his promise has not been kept.
We didn't see that in the capital plan. What we saw was 18 million of 55, so we've got a missing 37 million, and I suppose it will be up to our local representatives to advocate for that funding.
Across the river, they too are sorting out the fine details, looking for ways to make the numbers work.
We still don't have all of the details at this point, and so can't really comment on the specifics other than to say that the magnitude of the cut will mean we have to make some very, very significant decisions going forward.
School boards are also bracing for impact. They expect significant changes that could adversely affect students in K through 12. Educators say they expected to face cuts in the 2013 budget. They just hoped it wouldn't be this hard.
We are going to do everything we can to make it, that the effect is least on classrooms. So we'll be looking first and foremost at other places where we can affect the changes.
While there are no new taxes, there are increases to existing fees. Mayor Mar.08 says residential education tax increases should be covered by growth, but non-residential education tax has gone up by 18%, leaving businesses to face a 4 or 5% increase to their overall tax bill.
Many people know how it's...
School board officials say they now have to find a way to mold the minds of tomorrow on the budget platform that doesn't make sense to them today. Daryl Rummold, CTV News, Lethbridge.
So back at City Hall, the reaction to the budget is mostly positive. Mayor Mar.08 says they're breathing a sigh of relief today. That's because municipal infrastructure funding has remained steady, and it's the biggest funder of Lethbridge's capital projects. Dodick says council has a number of projects that have been awaiting approval because they weren't certain what the funding model would look like. He says he's happy and relieved to see municipalities largely untouched, as Premier Redford had promised.
Overall, relief comes in there. I mean, you always want to have a little bit more money for capital projects, but the city, the way they budget their capital projects is until they actually see the money, they're not going to fund projects. So we're in the middle of the capital improvement program. We've approved absolutely nothing at this point in time, but we do know now or have a good sense as to what grants will be available for the years that are encompassed by the capital improvement program.
The Alberta budget does take significant steps forward in supporting the province's most vulnerable, including children at risk, adults with disabilities, and the homeless. Funding for homelessness support is $111 million. That's an increase of $1.2 million, which the government says will help around 1,800 homeless Albertans this year and fund more than 3,200 spaces in emergency and transition shelters. Local officials say it shows a commitment to ending homelessness in Alberta.
This is truly a good news story for us in terms of us being able to sustain the funding that we have received in past years. What this will do is provide that security to our agencies that are providing the services to end homelessness in the community.
However, the province did make cuts to a program that helped seniors cover year-to-year increases in their property taxes. The changes mean that 70,000 Albertans will no longer qualify for the Senior School Property Tax Assistance Program, and funding for seniors' lodges has been reduced, while the budget for home care and rehabilitation has also shrunk. So what do you think of the 2013 budget that was handed down yesterday? We hit the streets to find out.
I think the province is doing its best to accommodate our population growth. There's extra demands, but however, we all have to live within our means.
I think it's really unfair. I mean, as a student, it's really hard to pay for university and student loans. So I think that the budget cuts, especially for us, will really increase the price of university.
It strikes me as strange that, you know, one of the richest provinces in Canada can find itself in a deficit situation. You know, it's just, to a layperson, obviously I don't understand economics, but it does seem strange.
And a very happy International Women's Day to you, Dory Rossiter.
And to you as well.
Why, thank you. Did you know in Russia that men actually carry flowers just to hand out to every woman that they see?
Hey, Alex, behind the camera, come on, flowers.
Flowers.
Not happening in our reality. But what is happening? Better weather for a few days, and I'll give you all the details in a couple of minutes.
Thanks, Dory. Well, the Health Quality Council of Alberta is once again recommending consolidation of ambulance dispatch services. They recommend Alberta Health Services take over ambulance dispatch, currently handled by the Lethbridge Public Safety Communications Centre. And they're also hoping the AHS technology will link up with their own so that emergency efficiency is maintained. Emergency services officials say they've been handling calls for years with no problems and don't see the need for a change.
We've been doing it for a long time in this region. We're very familiar with it. There's a lot to be said for multiple response dispatch. The fact that when somebody calls 911 and we can take their information down and at the same time as we're on the phone with them, dispatch police, fire, and ambulance, that means a lot to our citizens. It's much faster.
Now, the Communications Centre currently handles all emergency dispatch for police, fire, and ambulance services in Lethbridge and 25 other communities. A Southern Alberta woman has returned from Africa with a new appreciation for Canada and all the day-to-day things that we take for granted. City of Lethbridge employee Lori Harrison joined 2 Olympic athletes on a trip to Liberia and with an organization called Right to Play. Terry Boat reports.
It was a trip filled with games and laughter, but behind the smiling faces are so many stories of hardship, tragedy, and heartbreak. And for Lori Harrison of Colehurst, it was an experience that for several days afterward left her almost speechless.
My coworkers kindly were joking on the first day with anybody coming by my office not to ask me questions, because every time somebody would talk to me I would start to tear up and I couldn't talk. And it was very challenging my first morning, especially, to walk into work and realize that we're so lucky. Like, we are so lucky.
Harrison joined Olympians Clara Hughes and Rosie McLennan on a week-long trip to Liberia, passing through some of the poorest communities in the world. Using play and sports to teach children about teamwork, focus, and respect, but also deliver some hard messages in a language kids can understand.
Do you like to play? Yes.
Sadly, some of the game's intentions were to teach them about things like disease prevention and that you can't see AIDS, and to protect themselves from a lot of the sexual exploitation that's very normal there, things like that. So there were some very hard messages, but they do it in a way that the children, they love it so much, and they understand and they listen and they engage.
Harrison says the work being done in countries like Liberia is changing entire communities. In some cases, the children are now becoming role models for their parents. parents who grew up in poverty, often traumatized by war.
I've told them that, you know, if there's anything I can do to keep helping, I've seen that it's making a difference, and I've seen how respected they are in the communities. And of course, the kids loved us.
Terry Vogt, CTV News, Lethbridge.
Harriseum was chosen to go on the trip after entering a contest on the Right to Play Facebook page. For the 4th year in a row, the choral programs of all West Side Public Schools came together in voice to raise funds for those in need. The sounds of children's voices echoed through the historic hallways of the Central West Side United Church last night. All of the proceeds go towards the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen. Over 250 students aged 6 to 18 used their gift of song to raise free will donations for those in need.
It's really about making kids aware that, firstly, of how fortunate they are, and secondly, that it's important to be there for everyone in our community, those who might even be somewhat a little disenfranchised at this time or just need help.
These performances have raised thousands of dollars for those in need. Little piece of Lethbridge that has been collecting images from outer space for the past 4 years is about to end its mission. Imaging technology designed at the University of Lethbridge has been aboard the Herschel telescope since 2009. It's stationed 1.5 million kilometers from Earth, gathering the very first images of galaxies billions of light years away. It's been so successful, it's now slated for a Japanese space launch in 2022. Dr. David Naylor and a team of 20 from the U of L are now working on that project.
So we're building on the success of Herschel to do the next space mission, and it's going to be 100 times more sensitive. It's even going to be, it's going to blow us away in terms of what it can do.
The project will involve 8 countries, including Canada, which will play a significant role. The project will cost the Canadian Space Agency over $7 million. It's that time of year again. Some people love it, others hate it. The clocks are going forward. Most Canadians will lose an hour of sleep when the clocks switch from standard to daylight savings time. So before going to bed tomorrow night, turn your clocks and watches 1 hour ahead. It may mean 1 less hour of sleep, but it also does mark the beginning of longer days and more sunlight. Time now for a look at how the markets wrapped up the week.